Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to do a wrap up and currently reading video. So I'm going to talk about what I have read in the past week or so and what I'm currently reading, and just give a little brief update as to what's been going on. It's been a few days since I've been able to post, and that's mostly because I haven't been feeling so well. I've been sick with a bit of a cold. But that appears to be on the mend a little bit, so I thought I would take this time in my car when the lighting was really nice and film a little video. So just briefly, I've only finished one book in the last week or so, and that is I Hear Your Voice by, Young Ha Kim. And I picked this book up because it is the choice for February for Russell over at Ink and Paper Blog's book group. And this is the choice for Asia. We're doing a read around the world in 1,000 pages in his little book group. And so this is the Asia pick. And this story takes place in Korea, and to be honest with you, I didn't really like it that much. It follows two boys from childhood through basically their early adult years, and it's divided into 5 parts, I think, 5 or 6 parts, and each part, the transition between the sections is really jumpy. It didn't really flow. Each section doesn't flow together nicely, or at least it didn't for me. But my biggest problem with the book was the casual violence and sexual assault and sexual abuse of young women and girls in this book, which I found just really difficult to read about, and I didn't really understand what it was adding to the story, other than that these boys were not very good people. And I think that this story is supposed to be sort of like a social commentary on the life of young boys in urban poverty situations in Korea. And there's like sort of this culture of homelessness and motorcycle gangs and hip hop kind of culture, what I got from the book. And we're watching these two boys from childhood as they navigate through their teenage years and into early adulthood, and how they sort of come in and out of each other's lives, and how that sort of ties into this teenage motorcycle gang hip-hop culture. But I did not connect with this book at all. Probably if it hadn't been for the book club, I wouldn't have even finished it. So not a very successful one for me. Now, my current audiobook is the first book in the Robin Hobb Tawny Mann trilogy, which is part of the Realm of the Elderling series. And this is Fool's Errand, which is, like I said, book 1 of Tawny Mann. I have had this physical copy on my shelf, but needed an audiobook and was really feeling like fantasy for my audiobook. So I grabbed this on audio, and I've been listening to that all week. I think I have like 8.5 hours left of something like 28 or 29 hour audiobook, and I'm just loving it. I mean, Robin Hobb, we say it all the time on BookTube how great Robin Hobb is, and I just love the story. But we're back with Fitz and the Fool in this trilogy, whereas with the Live Ship Traders, we were in Bingtown with the live ships and sort of a pirates sailing kind of story, and we're back with a more traditional epic fantasy type style here with Fitz and the Fool. The next thing that I'm currently working on is Ancillary Justice by Leckie. This is my current buddy read with Patrice Jones, book buddy reader extraordinaire on BookTube, and she and I have been slowly working our way through this science fiction novel over the last few weeks, reading, 3, 4, or 5 chapters every 3 days or so, and then commenting back and forth to each other. And I have to say that style, slow pace of reading this particular book has worked very well for me. This story is basically is told in alternating chapters, where one chapter is past timeline and one chapter is current present day timeline, and we're following a soldier named Breck and her story from both in the present and in the past. And as you can see, the two timelines are kind of weaving together, and we're going to eventually see how Brett got to where she is in the present day by what we're learning about her in the past. And the thing about this book that's hard when you first start is gender is not designated the way that we normally designate gender in English language. So it's kind of hard to follow along at first. You're kind of confused about who is who and whether or not they're male or female, and then you just sort of pick it up and you just sort of flow with the story. Breck is trying to find somebody in the present day timeline on an icy planet, and we're following her. She tries to find this one person who can help her accomplish a goal. And then in the past timeline, we're following a group of soldiers who are trying to basically, they're the occupying force after a group of what's the word I want? The empire that this empire called the Raj has taken over a planet, and these group of soldiers is trying to basically be the government as they adopt and bring this colonial entity into their empire. And we're following that. And I don't feel like I'm explaining that very well, but it is a good story. I'm very much enjoying it. And there's a lot to say here about gender. There's a lot to say here about colonialization and how governments impose their will on others. And there's a lot to say about artificial intelligence and things like that. So really getting a lot out of that book. Very much enjoying that read with Patrice. The other two things that I'm reading are nonfiction. I'm still working on Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. This is the surprising new science that will transform your sex life. This is basically a sexuality book. I won't say it's for women, although it's written from, so obviously a woman author, and it's written from sort of a woman's point of view, but I think this would be useful to both men and women. And I'm certainly learning a lot more about human sexuality from this book than I ever learned in school. And I will also say that I wish that there had been something like this around when I was younger. I think this is a really great book, and I really like the writing style. Nagoski, it writes in a very breezy, upbeat, conversational type style, and I find that really compelling and a lot of fun to read. So that's a good one as well. And then my last current read, also nonfiction, and this is 1493 by Charles C. Mann. This looks at world history from the time after Columbus as basically world trade is being established, and all the different players and all the different issues basically that established the current globalization that we have today in our world. Just read a section. I'm on page like 209 of this large 500 something page book. And the section that I just completed was all about how silver was the initial monetary currency, worldwide monetary currency that we had, and how that got started in South America and how it impacted countries all around the world and how it was the first global currency that we had. Fascinating book. Really enjoying that as well. The other couple of things that I'm going to be working on this weekend are my current issue of The Atlantic. This one is The Plot Against America. Paul Manafort and the Fall of Washington is the cover story here. But there's a lot of different articles in here about current, excuse me, this cold. There's a lot of different articles about American political issues. I did read, let me just flip through here so I can see what the name of this last article was I read. Oh, it's a essay written by two guys from the, what is the name of that think tank? The Brookings Institute, which is considered a fairly conservative think group, I believe. And they've written an essay in this Atlantic Monthly that's Boycott the GOP. The party is now a threat to the constitutional order. Even conservatives must vote against Republicans at every opportunity. And they lay out their thinking as to why the current Republican Party in America is a threat to democracy in our country. So that was interesting. And I will try to remember to leave a link to that article in the show notes down below so you can check it out if you're interested. The other periodical that I'm reading is I was able to get a cheap subscription to the New York Times Review of books. And so I think this has been coming like every other week or something. And I've never ever had a subscription to the New York Review of Books. And this has been fantastic for me to get these long form reviews of books. This is my second issue. I haven't read any of this. I just received it yesterday in the mail. I haven't even had time to look at it. But there's one here. There's a review in here on Jesmyn Ward. So that's going to be interesting to look at. And there was one in the... trying to remember the review that I read in the last issue that was really interesting to me. I think it was one on the book The Color of Law, which sounded fascinating. So very much enjoying this new periodical as well. I'll try to remember to point out a couple of really good reviews or reviews that I've liked very well in my next wrap-up. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to mention here in my updates was that I have been working diligently on my Black History Month TBR, which I had listed out in a previous video. I'll link that down below. But I've decided to wrap all those Black History books up in a wrap-up video at the end of February so that I can talk about all my Black History books together, all the books that I read for Black History Month together, sort of as a themed wrap-up. So look for that towards the end of February. I'll be doing that. I've been doing some very good reading on that theme this month. And I think that's it for me for my reading life this last week or so. I hope you are all doing very well, and I will talk to you later.